I guess my next question would be, where did you, when did you decide to mix? Have you ever done like just plain sermons, or have they always been in the form of
For
poetry?
sure. I've always, my first sermon is actually a really funny story, man. And this is how you know I like to keep it real, because I just say what's in my heart. My first sermon was on, actually, you know, my EP involves approval, but my first sermon was on the addiction of approval.
Yeah.
And that was when I was really, really young. I was maybe around 8 when I started doing that.
Oh, yeah.
And I went to this guy's church. His name is Pastor Steve. And it wasn't even like a real church. It was like a shop. And they converted it into a church. It was a workshop. And he converted it into a church. And I remember I had a book for some reason. I don't remember the name of it, but it was about approval. And I just remember copywriting the entire book and using it as a sermon and making it seem like, oh yeah, man, I'm the one that did all this. I'm such an intellectual being who thought of this. Jesus was downloading thoughts into my mind, when in reality I was just copywriting an entire book. So that was the first time I like preached, but my first real sermon, I have to say, was probably a month or two after that. And I preached at my old church. It was New Salem United Methodist Church. And I preached on love. And it was pretty down to earth, pretty basic. But I mean, the moral of the sermon was just love each other. We gotta love each other. And so I've always been preaching. Before I wrote poetry, I actually was preaching. Like, I just didn't realize, I didn't put two and two together.
Yeah.
Because my poetry at the time was my love letters. That was my cues to get girls. It wasn't used for, yo, let me talk about real life.
Separate categories.
Yeah, it was two separate categories, and I didn't even realize it was poetry. So I mean, like, I've always actually started out doing sermons, and I've been preaching, and didn't do poetry and mix them together. I really honestly started mixing them probably, when was that? When did I start mixing those? That was probably about, I think it was actually when I started Southview. I started Southview, and I'd keep a journal. That was back when I used to write everything in a book, and I kept a journal of like how my thoughts are on America, how my thoughts were on Black Lives Matter, how my thoughts were on Jesus and relationship. And that's kind of when I really started. And I just remember bringing that book, and people would make fun of me like, yo, you talk about poetry,
Who
roses.
are you talking about?
We ain't gonna name names,
All right,
dude. We ain't naming names.
anyone.
No
And
names.
For those who don't know, Southview is a school that he and I went to together.
Yeah. So like Southview Christian School, shout out to them. And like, it was just like in that moment, I was like, dang, man, people are dissing on me, they're hating on me for trying to talk about stuff I really have in my heart. Like, that's crazy, man. But I think at that time I kind of put it away for like a couple years, and I really didn't start picking up poetry again until like,
You sort of let what they were saying get to your head.
I didn't really pick it back up until like maybe my last year. Actually, I probably started picking it up really heavily when I actually really started writing again. But I've always been preaching. I've been on the trucker radio before. I've had sermons on there. I've been blessed with many opportunities to witness to people and spread the gospel of Jesus. But at the same time, I felt like all through that time when I was preaching, I knew Jesus, and I knew like the knowledge, because I grew up in church and I was known as this super spiritual guy ever since a young age. Like, people would literally tell me like, oh dude, you're Jesus. And I'm like, no man, I'm not Jesus. But I had people really who didn't know God at all who would tell me like, no, you're Jesus. And honestly, that level of expectation was rough on me growing up. And because it's like I had this certain standard I had to live by, and I couldn't really fully be my entire self, because it was like, if you messed up, we're gonna call you out on it, because you're supposed to be
The super spiritual.
this super spiritual young guy, the Billy Graham's generation. I've been called that a lot in my life. And you know what I'm saying, like, I felt like at that time I knew the information about the Bible. I could tell you scriptures and everything, but I had a personal relationship with Jesus, but it's not like how I feel like I have with him now. Like, now I could sit down, and I like to talk more about grace and abundance and what God can provide, and less on, you know, when the devil comes, we gotta do this, which is true. We do have to fight the enemy with the word and everything, but I'm more focused now on, I call God Dad. Like I don't even call it praying anymore. I call it talking to him. And I call God Dad because that's how I view him, as a father-son relationship. So like that's how I view my relationship is with God, is that now, I still preach, but I prefer to preach not behind the pulpit. I prefer to preach behind the scenes. Like I'm more known of a guy who likes to sit down with you, like right here, just talking in private and just talking to you about the Lord and talking to you about your life. And I might not even come at you and be like, yo, you need to go to Jesus. I might just be like, hey man, tell me about, your dad. Tell me about your relationship with your mom. Tell me about your family. Let's talk about that. Let's see how that pertains in the Bible. And let me show you how all the hurt they gave you doesn't compare with the love that Jesus has for you. You know what I'm saying? So like nowadays, in the past couple years, I can say that I'm more focused on relationship and less on works. Right. And if people call me now and are like, hey man, can you please preach at this service, I'll do it if I pray about it and I feel like the Lord's leading me to. But excuse me, for the most part though, I'm just like, you know what, I'm more of a behind the scenes guy. I'm the guy, when people go up to the altar, I go up there and pray with you. I go up there and talk with you because I want you to get the best you get. I'm a more one-on-one person.
Right.
But man, I mean, I don't even remember what the question was, because I go off on rants. Y'all know me. But yeah, man, like that's for real though. Like I've been doing ministry for a while, but I really look at it now as, you can do ministry so many different ways outside of just preaching. Yeah. Like ministry, honestly, in my opinion, 90% of ministry is done not behind the pulpit. Right. 10% should be done behind the pulpit, but 90% should be out here reaching people, talking to people who need God. You know what I'm saying?
And pastors can't be everywhere.
Yeah, like we should be disciples and we should go do that. Yeah. And like that's something I do. Like that's why, I've been writing poetry, but I've also been really involved with my community. Like I like to walk around, like I got a lot of homeless friends, honestly. Like I got one particularly in mind who, besides myself, he's like my biggest fan. When I have a show downtown, this dude comes up to my shows and is just absolutely loves me and is like always there every time I say I have a show downtown. And like that's the type of heart I have. Is like I like to extend a hand out to people and try to not really a hand out, a hand up to people, because if they're down, I want to be able to bring them up. But yeah,
would you say that he's your biggest fan?
Yeah, pretty much, man.
Definitely.
I don't know his last name, but if y'all ever seen my Instagram or something, man.
I know who you're talking about.
Yeah, his name's Roger. He's from New York. He's got a thick New York accent. And, that dude, I've known him for a couple years. He used to come to my church every now and then, and we try to be there for him. But he's not always in the right mind, He's not always thinking straight. But the crazy thing is, and that's why I love doing poetry, because, I've known him for a while, and he knows me. But now, since he has something to connect with me on, because he's very intellectual. Although he's not always thinking straight, he's a very intellectual dude. Yeah. And like he knows words, he knows how to talk, and when he is in the right mind. And now it's like we have something to talk about. Like me and him can talk about poetry. We have something we can connect on, and that involves in ministry, because it's like, he's like, I really loved your piece on when you were talking about being in suicide and being in a dark place, and you found God. And I'm like, that's cool, man. You want to talk about it? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, poetry is more, to me, is more, it's my art, it's my love, it's a passion. I love writing, but, I'm more about in the behind the scenes intention of it, that I'm really just trying to help people, try to change viewpoints, try to get people to be open to perspectives.
And that piece that he's talking about, I know it could be a little deep, and like you don't have to share if you don't want to.
No, that's straight.
Do you remember it off the top of your head?
For sure. A couple years ago, I was really suicidal and really depressed, actually because I felt like I had a lot of religious folks in my life who were so focused on how they think I should look like as a Christian, that it really made me question my own beliefs in God is if I was really saved or not. And I knew I was saved, but I was so fighting so hard just to get the feeling of am I saved.
Yeah.
And through that couple years, the poem he's talking about, I call it The Dark Place. Y'all can check it out on YouTube. Follow me, Samuel Hall.
And I'll provide links.
For sure.
Yeah.
But like The Dark Place was just talking about that, man. Because I mean, dude, it felt like I was holding a God with about a string about this big.
Yeah.
Like I was really wanting to kill myself and give up, man. Because like I felt like I wasn't saved. I felt like God wasn't there for me. But the crazy thing is how God works is that he was there the whole time. Because while I was depressed and while I was really confused about my spirituality, that made me honestly want to go deeper and want to go deeper in the Bible.
Yeah.
Let me find out, what does it say? Okay, this says that if you confess your sins and call upon the name of the Lord and believe in him, that those will be saved. I had to get that so burned inside of me in those couple of years that that's really honestly the only reason why I'm still here today.
Sort of like he was using your depression to cure.
Yeah, like it's that valley, that dark place, the process you might call. People tell me, my pastor has always told me, trust your process. And honestly, I thank God for my pastor, because if it wasn't for him as well, you know, him just encouraging me and constantly giving me words of wisdom and encouraging me on to stay strong, I wouldn't be here. Because he would always tell me, this is the biggest thing, and it stuck out in my life. And if y'all don't get anything from this interview, I really want y'all to get this, is that you can't get in the weight room and get strong without resistance. You have to have weights to be pushing in order to get stronger. And ever since he had put it to me that way, that's the biggest thing I want to get across, is that through your struggles, through your tribulations, as long as you know you're not the one causing them and inflicting those struggles, that God is going to use those and bring you out. You may not feel like it right now, bro, or sis, you may not feel like it, but I swear on everything, man, if you just hold on to God and you just dive in the Word and just seek him through those troubles and hard places, you might feel good and you might feel down, up and constantly like an elevator, but if you just hold on to God, you'll get through them, I promise, because it's made me stronger. It's made me honestly realize how much he really does love me.
Yeah.
But
there's a lot to that.
Yeah.
I guess so now we can talk about the EP.
I guess.
Yeah, that's been a lot on my mind. I've had a lot of questions about
Go
that.
ahead.
I guess I could say, listening to it, I know I have a vague idea, but what inspired it overall, would you say?
All right, so I've been performing the last couple years. Last couple years. I've been performing in public the last summer, honestly. Once I graduated, I just hit the road, started performing all the time. And there's this dope environment in Greensboro that I perform at a lot called the Artist Block.
Right.
And they invite rappers, singers, poets, break dancers, DJs, like all type painters, photographers, all types of amazing artists, people, just great people. And there's a guy there named that I've met one time, and his name was Jimmy Rome. Shout out to Jimmy, man. And I was going to this certain event every Sunday that they have up in Greensboro called Speak Easy.
Yeah.
And it's where you just go out. It's like an open mic type thing. You just go out, perform. They have little ciphers and stuff, freestyle ciphers. And you know, I met this dude named Jimmy, and I was like, yo, this guy's really talented. Like, this dude is probably one of the best rappers locally I've seen in a while, and I really like him a lot. I think he sounds like Jay-Z. Some other people say he doesn't. I know people are gonna say that's a stretch, but I mean, if you actually listen to this dude, you would see what I'm talking about. Like, my opinion, I think he sounds like Jay-Z.
Yeah.
And very lyrical, very good metaphors. And he came to me that same day I first met him, and I was so surprised because that performance specifically I did about 4 pieces, and it wasn't my best performance. It really wasn't. I mean, I kept stumbling. I didn't have my poems memorized.
Yeah.
For some odd reason, my eyes were burning, and I kept having water in my eyes, and I kept having to wipe my eyes and pause myself from performing. It was like one of the worst performances I can honestly think of. But I think Jimmy saw the authenticity inside of me, and he saw how real I was and how I wanted to really talk about issues that are important to this day and generation.
Yeah.
And he just came to me and was like, yo, I got this album I'm trying to work on, and I would love if it's called Stockholm Syndrome, and I would love if you could write a whole bunch of poems involving Stockholm Syndrome. And for those who don't know what Stockholm Syndrome is, it was an event that happened back in a bank. I believe it was in London. I might be wrong. And hostages were being held hostage, and over time, as they were being held hostage, they kind of developed feelings for the people that were holding them hostage. Like, oh, you know, they're only doing this because of this. Maybe they're not so bad. And that's what Stockholm Syndrome is. It's defending the people who are actually holding you hostage and not being free. And he had told me about that. He was like, yo, can you bend this as much as possible? And I was like, I can try. So, I mean, that's really how it happened. Is I just, basically, he was going to take all my poems that I put on my EP, and he was going to take the parts out of those poems on the EP, and he was going to use those parts to narrate his entire album. And I was like, yo, that's dope for me, because I've always wanted to be narrating somebody's album. And he just wanted me to narrate his album. And over time, man, I just really, after I wrote all my pieces and sent it to him, I really